So today was the day, and well, there's going to be no more witnesses called. The defense is officially rested, and it's just going to be closing arguments on Monday morning in the Kim Potter trial. And what has really come out of this in the past few days? Not a whole lot, okay? Basically, as the state ended up resting their case a couple days ago because the defense was just short, sweet, to the point, only bringing a couple of character or witnesses that were there. A family friend who was more of a friend to her kids than was to her. A former officer that she used to work with extensively on the same shift for about 10 years plus. The former police chief who said that, she did absolutely nothing wrong, and everything that I seen, he's seen her body cam footage and as well the squad car footage that was there. He's seen the entirety of events from those two different perspectives. In his opinion, nothing there was in violation of everything that she did, whether it would have been effectively pulling the taser or firing and killing Daunte Wright. Didn't see anything, and that has been his statement since the beginning of this, and that was yesterday, okay? Yesterday, because they had a expert, okay, who was incredibly good. The dude was basically super cop, and that's the way that they started their day, and they went through, I think they went through lunch with direct and cross and then recross, all that kind of good fun shit. And we'll get into that because I want to recap the past 3 days because I find those to be the most important. And then everything before that was basically arguing everything that happened after the crash. It had nothing to do with anything that Kim Potter did, okay, and what was being charged. But first and foremost, and we're going to come back to this at the end of the video, I just want to tell you what the charges are because I went through jury instructions at the end of the day and this is all said and done, okay? And I'll let you make up your own mind, okay? But it's very important what's included and what's not included, okay? So these are the two charges that Kim Potter for accidentally shooting and killing Daunte Wright. This is what she faces. First-degree manslaughter predicated on reckless use, handling of a firearm, and second-degree manslaughter. First-degree manslaughter in this case means prosecutors allege that Potter caused Wright's death while committing a misdemeanor, the reckless handling or use of a firearm so as to endanger the safety of another with such force and violence that death or great bodily harm to any person was reasonably foreseeable. Second-degree manslaughter charge alleges that she caused his death by her culpable negligence, okay? Meaning that Potter caused an unreasonable risk and consciously took the chance of causing death or great bodily harm to Wright while using or possessing a firearm. Neither charge requires prosecution to prove Potter intended to kill Wright. That was never in dispute, okay? That was in every single piece of video that was out there. And then those couple of worthless days of testimony that was just arguing the aggravating factors that could potentially lead to a longer prison sentence where if the jury comes back with a guilty verdict on either of the charges there, they can charge more or charge less if they have, and they'll be running through another trial in order to decide those factors, but they laid all the foundation for that during 2 days of the trial. It was fucking ponderous, okay? And even one of those days, the defense asked for a mistrial because these are Blakely factors, and those are those aggravating causes afterwards. What the fuck are we wasting everybody's time for? We can just, end this right now. And this is completely prejudicial to the client and showing everything that happened afterwards. It's like, okay, you shot him. That's what you're on trial for. Everything that happened after that, that was out of your control. You had nothing to do with any of that, and that's fair, okay? If you want to argue that after the fact, that's for the judge to decide, and that would potentially be for the judge to decide later, okay? But as for right now, those are the two charges that are claimed. And what's important here is, okay, for the first degree, because there's a couple of different terms that are in each of these charges here that we're going to have to parse out. The reckless part of the first degree, okay? Reckless, and this is what the prosecution is just resting their entire case on for as best as I can understand it, because I'm trying to see it from their perspective. What is their case set on? Because there's been so much gobbledygook in the entirety of their case. I've watched every second of this from jury selection all the way through till today, and then on Monday I'll be watching closing arguments as well. They haven't really put forth a coherence in an argument that's lawfully on the books. Like, they're just hoping that you mix up the colloquial version of reckless with the legal definition of reckless, okay? Because reckless between you and me, okay, you knock over a vase on a table, it smashes, and it just completely destroys into 10,000 little pieces, okay? You can say, okay, yeah, you were being reckless, you bumped into that table, it caused the destruction of this timeless vase, therefore you owe me a new vase, okay? Like, that could be the argument that's made in civil court. But when it comes to criminal charges, and that's what this is, reckless means a knowing disregard that what you're doing, knowing that your handling or use of a firearm is endangering the safety of another. You have to know what you are doing resulted in that death, okay? Did she know? No. Okay, they haven't even raised that. The prosecution hasn't raised that at all, at least not competently. All they've done is just muddy the water, and their responsibility as a prosecution is to charge and present a case on Kim Potter that is beyond a reasonable doubt. So first-degree manslaughter doesn't fit to me unless you purposely muddy, and this could be their entire idea for closing arguments on Monday, okay? Try to mix together reckless colloquial and reckless legal, okay? And they could be doing that, but then at the end of the day, the jury's going to have the jury instructions, so they're going to have to hope that they implanted that seed of doubt when it comes to the textbook definition enough to get a guilty verdict, okay? And then you got the second degree, and you have culpable negligence, okay? And that's the same thing. You have to be culpable for your actions. You have to know that what you were doing is wrong. And again, nowhere in any of that video, and they didn't allege any of that what she was doing was wrong. So to me, by the letter of the law, it doesn't fit. But they did their damnedest over 5 days of parading useless witness after useless witness, or at least it was useless to their case. The cross-examination, who, if I ever find myself in a situation like Kim Potter does, I pray to God my defense looks like Paul Eng and Earl Gray, because those guys are master question askers, okay? Nothing was below par, okay? The worst was probably what we're going to take a look at right now a couple days ago when the final witness that the state brought up was their expert, and it was just this little pencil neck geek who's consulted, okay? And his big claim to fame was that, oh, I'm going to offer my expert testimony to the George Floyd trial to no charge to anybody else because I'm just trying to raise my profile. And then, yeah, he charged $10,000 with a cap of $95,000, which that's going to be right there in the jury's mind as well, up to $95,000 for his expert testimony where, you know what, he predictably said exactly what the prosecution wanted him to say. Everything that Kim Potter did was wrong. Okay, cool, case closed, that's about it. But you have to take a look at the totality of the evidence that they supplied as well. Every police officer that they called from Brooklyn Park, Officer Lucky, who was the trainee of Kim Potter on that day, said that I would have pulled my taser at the exact same situation. She didn't do anything wrong. Officer Johnson, former Officer Johnson, now Major Johnson. Yes, literally, he works for the sheriff's department. He's a major. He said, hey, I was inside that vehicle. Okay, I would have pulled my firearm as well. Okay, so you also had the trainer on the trainer for like the totality of the Brooklyn Center Police Department. He was there. He didn't say anything damning towards Kim Potter either. It was witness after witness after witness of just plodding questioning by the prosecution, and then just immediately in a fraction of the time, like a quarter to about 20% of the time that the direct examination took, the cross-examination by either Paul Eng, if you were watching along, you would know that as well, or just Earl Gray will get up there and just hike up his pants and he'd say, hey, you know what, Officer Kim Potter, former Officer Kim Potter, she's a good person, right? He was never improper. He was direct. The only time that you could argue that he might not have been as effective as he was during the other rather sympathetic, and if we're being completely fair, the state's witnesses that came forward were rather sympathetic to Kim Potter, except with the exception of the BCA, who was doing the investigation of the incident after the fact, and they weren't even really prejudicial against Kim Potter. They were just kind of there to really talk about the crash that happened afterwards. Like, there was a whole lot of nothing, okay? Like I said, this is the only one that really mattered, okay, on day 6 at the end of the fucking day, and he took, I'm pretty sure it was from lunch all the way through the end of the day. This was the only one that really mattered, so we're just going to go ahead and briefly talk about this before we get into the closing events of the day. So yeah, he was the man we're going to be talking about there, the one that you've seen there for a little while, Seth Stoughton. Yeah, he was briefly a police officer 15 years ago for 5 years, mostly spent his time behind the desk. But yeah, he was the use of force expert, and all of his expert testimony that he provides at a fee, of course, and I'm not obliging anybody. This is exactly what both sides get to do. They get to hire their hired guns, okay? And they get to come up and say whatever the prosecution wants them to say, and nothing against that, okay? You can hire an expert and they don't give you the testimony that you want, okay? You don't have to call them to trial, okay? That was unfortunately a waste of money for you, but you got to do your research on this type of stuff. So the state already knows of Professor Seth Stoughton, a law professor who has become something of an anti-police use of force expert witness, gun for hire. You may recall that Professor Stoughton, from his retention as an expert witness from the same prosecutors in the Derek Chauvin trial, who most of the prosecutors that are on this case, the Kim Potter case, were also on the Derek Chauvin trial. Matthew Frank, what's her name? Erin, she just did the cross of Kim Potter, and I can't remember her name. She did just the Wicked Witch of the East, or I guess of the Midwest, if we're going to be fair. Yeah, they were all a part of the Chauvin trial. And then I think the little thin spastic in the back, he was also a part of it. So these are the same people running out their same experts because they think that it's just such a slam dunk case, because they just hope that the people who are deciding the matters in this case are as stupid to just bite down on the media narrative and not look at the facts of the case. They're just hoping. Maybe they thought in the first 6 days of their testimony that they just lulled them to sleep and then they wouldn't wake up for the last 2. Fortunately, it didn't really work out that way. His direct questioning was conducted by ADA Matthew Frank, who just stumbled, mumbled, and fucked around for hours and hours and hours, like Andrew Bronca has dictated here. I won't detail Stoughton's more than 2 hours of direct testimony for the state, except for to note that the state appears to have gotten what it paid for, about $10,000 in total, and Stoughton's expert opinion that there was absolutely no manner of use of force, either deadly or non-deadly force, that was or could have been lawfully appropriate use upon a Daunte Wright by Kim Potter, regardless of whether her fellow officers were inside, outside, around side, in the vehicle, outside of the vehicle, on top of the vehicle. She was never authorized to use any force, according to Professor Seth Stoughton. Yes, of course. Let me just drink my water and let me just adjust the microphone so you could properly hear me. God, he's just a little fucking whatever. So yeah, throughout the 2+ hours of direct testimony of Frank going, stutter, but yeah, there were several objections and at least one sidebar objecting to Stoughton's attempting to definitively determine, that Kim Potter's subjective state of mind was during the encounter with Wright. This is impermissible, as Stoughton can't read Potter's mind. Yeah, exactly. He can only be an expert witness based on his experience and the facts of the case. He can't go in and say, well, Kim Potter knew this. He can attest to a reasonable officer, and of course that's for the jury to infer that a reasonable officer is Kim Potter, because of course she is, right? And we've got to go ahead and we've got to take the state's interpretation of this straw man of a reasonable officer, right? Laws be damned. Just please listen to what we have to say on Monday, because it's going to be the most compelling argument we can make. Hopefully the defense hasn't shattered us and we can't go home over the weekend, or the jury can't go home over the weekend and really just mull over the absolute dick kicking they took over the past couple of days. Yeah, to my eyes and ears, Stoughton once again came across as smarmy and fake. Bronca was also covering, and I was using his blog for doing the weekly wrap-ups when it came to the George Floyd Derek Chauvin trial. And yeah, I probably breezed over him. I didn't quite remember him anyways, but he was really smarmy. He was very fake. He was very rehearsed, and everything was very just by the book and exactly what you'd expect from a hired gun. And it's unlikely the juries have my prior experience with Stoughton in particular, or a gun for hire expert witness in general. And he was the first expert witness that the jury got to see, so maybe that clouded their perception. But then the following 2 expert witnesses that came from the state had a very, very different presentation, at least in my opinion. Okay, there's always, in all of these articles, there's going to be links to videos, and feel free to watch them for yourself, but just to let you know that this guy's a total fucking bookworm and didn't come across as any sort of person that would be a use of force expert. He would just more or less just be that guy who would just be in the back row going, yeah, you get him, yeah, you go. He wouldn't be the big, tall, imposing officer up front actually doing the shit. Okay, he's the academic as opposed to the other witnesses that are out there who are actually, you know what, out in the field doing the work. But okay, with that said, Stoughton did ultimately suggest that a reasonable officer in Potter's position could have simply allowed Wright to flee the scene. This is legitimately what he said, okay? Yeah, what should she have done, okay? If she couldn't do anything to restrain, and none of those officers there could have restrained Daunte Wright and got him under arrest because, A, he was fleeing a warrant for his arrest, okay? He had a bench warrant for a gun, okay? And police officers normally act on a warrant from the police, okay, and then they were going to arrest him. He was resisting arrest, which is a felony, by the way. Got back into the vehicle. So what was Kim Potter supposed to do? What was Anthony Lucky supposed to do? What was Michael Johnson supposed to do? Well, just let him go, right? Just let him go. Already have all the information on him. You can just get him at a later date. Don't worry about it. What the fuck are you on about, dude? But yeah, no, that's his expert opinion, and it's weird coming from the state, who will literally fucking throw you in jail for having expired registration, expired insurance, no driver's license for anybody else not named Daunte Wright. All of those things he did have. So yeah, just flee the scene along with his female passenger, who although they could have been conduct of a reasonable officer. After all, Wright could simply be picked up at a later date, given that the officers already knew his identity. So, according to this prosecution, hey, if you're in Minnesota and you find yourself trying to be cuffed by police officers, if you just get away, please, if you just decide to take off, that's the right thing to do, by a former police officer and an expert on use of force, by the way. And he's also magically a taser expert as well. But yeah, no, that's the gist of what came out on direct. So on cross, Gray started off by asking Stoughton to confirm that he'd suggested that what a reasonable officer should have done was simply allow Wright to free, and Stoughton flatly denied having said anything of the sort. He actually did say that, but then they just bickered on terminology, so whatever. Now, frankly, Gray dropped the ball here. Stoughton is the kind of expert witness who, if you paraphrase his statement with one single word differing from the actual statement, then he will flatly deny having made the statement, meaning that the paraphrase statement, even if it is substantially identical to the actual statement. Yeah, he's just one of these pedantic cunts who's out there. He's just, I didn't exactly say that. Well, what did you exactly say? Well, you could get the court reporter to go back and look at it, and ugh, fuck, now we got to waste a bunch of time in order to go back on that just because I changed one word or couldn't necessarily remember exactly what you said, but paraphrasing isn't allowed. Funny, once we get to Kim Potter's cross-examination, that's going to come up as well. But yeah, no, totally fine there for Professor Stoughton, who I'm an expert witness. That said, certainly the jury heard Stoughton's original statement that allowing Wright to simply free would be the decision of a reasonable officer. While no amount of force by Potter under any circumstances here could be lawful or appropriate, and hopefully they took note of Stoughton's less than honest denial. Yeah, and they went back and forth for minutes on that one, by the way. Cleverly, Gray asked Stoughton about his retainer contract on the case, which you're allowed to do when it comes to expert witness. It's a part of your resume. It's a part of the contract for you to be there. It's about all of your credibility that's there. Do you stand to gain? Are there any bonuses if there's a conviction? If there's any bonuses on an acquittal, depending on who you're being retained by? That's all very important, okay? Because you could be lying. You could be amplifying your expertise in order to acquire a windfall. It's not what happened here, but also, Gray asking this also puts us into the jury's mind, who, if you recall, is, you know, they've been there. They've been a part of this plotting fucking trial for the guts of 3 weeks, okay, through jury selection, being subpoenaed day after day, wondering if their number's finally going to get called to see if they're going to get voir dired, and then having to sit through the state's fucking case day after day after day after day, knowing that this dude, at the end of the day, is going to end up getting $10,000, and they're making maybe $100 per day, maybe. That's always what you hope gets put into their mind, but that's the best you can do with what you have, okay? And asked if it was correct that Stoughton stood to make up to $50,000 on his case. Stoughton, once again, answered evasively, so Gray whipped it out. Yes, he did. And had Stoughton read the portion aloud. In fact, Stoughton stood to make up to a maximum of $95,000 on the case. Now, in fact, Stoughton will probably make about $10,000 in case, but the $95,000 figure will surely stick in the jury's head. Exactly. But yeah, it was more or less because this dude, I had a very detailed 56-page report that I went over, and everything that I seen, there was no reason to believe that anybody should have done anything, and Daunte Wright was just a good boy, and he should have just been allowed to leave, and the police officers could have played tag with him on another day. And I've seen every piece of conceivable evidence, and included, I seen at the time, Officer Johnson, which made me a little bit too distracted, so I had to come back at a later date to see Officer Johnson's body cam. Oh, it still gets me a little bit excited, but from what I could tell, his arms and his shoulders were inside the car at the perfect freeze frame that, you know what, I make, okay? I would determine that he was in no conceivable situation where he could be injured if that car decided to just take off. Okay, he was not in any sort of danger there, even though he was, you know what, draped over the passenger who testified about the situation as well. Obviously, though, yeah, no, his interpretation of a fucking body cam, which is right there, okay, it's placed right on your sternum, okay, and that's not at all a complete representation of everything that the officer, you know what, with your full ability to look around, that's not at all what you're going to see, but he's the expert, okay? But yeah, so his determination was kind of exactly what you'd expect, and if you were anticipating anything else from a hired gun, sorry about that. But yeah, they ended up going back and forth, but then at the end of that, the state left it open, okay? But then they rested the following morning, and then, yeah, the Giga Chad fucking cop who's been a cop for 40 plus years from Missouri. And yep, unlike your previous force of use expert, I had open heart surgery yesterday. Well, I'm sorry, that was last week. I drove up from Missouri, and I'm doing this free of charge because whenever somebody's freedom is on the line, I don't find it to be ethical for me to take it. And I currently have 5 cases open right now, and between this one and one other, I'm only speaking on behalf of officers who are being prosecuted. I'm only speaking on their behalf in 2 of those 5 cases. I forgot about one of them, but it later came up on cross-examination from that stupid asshole Matthew Frank that, yes, indeed, there's one case that is before me, but I have not written anything on it yet, so I didn't think to add it, but it really doesn't matter. It changes the spread from 1 in 4 to 2 in 5, so I don't know what you're trying to get on that one, but I've literally taught police training, use of force, and how to be an exemplary officer in every fucking country in the goddamn world. And then also, on my free time, I go down to Haiti to help out orphans. Like this, that's not even an exaggeration. This dude has a fucking resume. He has a CV that's probably as long as stupid Stoughton's entire fucking report. And then at the beginning of the day, the state had the audacity, this expert, clearly he doesn't know what he's talking about because he only had a 3-page report. He was on the stand for the entirety of the morning, okay? And he was explaining everything, okay? Mostly because writing everything that he knows down, well, to be frank, it would be a month-long read, but let's get into what he had to say. So his name was Steve Ijames, okay, or Steve Imes, I can't remember. The state's first defense witness of the trial was Stephen Imes, a use of force expert and recently retired law enforcement officer who, this guy has 44 years of experience, and he was in, literally, okay, this is not an exaggeration, he was in the first ever Taser trainer course, okay? He knows the guys who made the Taser, like the one that Kim Potter thought that she had. He was in that course in 1999, I was there. But yeah, on top of that, Ijames has Ijames or Imes, I can't remember, okay? Has an impressive resume that would perhaps be an understatement of the year, except it would be an even greater understatement to say that the qualifications of Imes completely eclipse that to the state's expert, multiple times over. 5 years, 15 years ago, Stoughton was a police officer, and I can't remember what place, but Steve Imes, 44 years of service, okay? Giving speeches, giving lectures, setting up SWAT teams in Springfield, Missouri. The dude's done fucking everything. Besides being an LEO for some 44 years, law enforcement officer, working his way from patrolman to chief of his department, Ijames was also a graduate of the FBI National Academy and the equivalent DEA Academy, and he's commissioned as U.S. Marshal in various task forces. Spent many years as a full-time SWAT officer, kicking in doors and serving felony warrants. Awarded a law enforcement Silver Star Award for successfully saving a hostage held up in a liquor store robbery gone bad. A rescue that required him to shoot and kill the hostage taker. As recently as 2 months ago, yes, Ijames was still driving a marked police car for a park service, and was now testifying in court after driving from Missouri to Minnesota in his own car through storms and fire. Yep, because the past Friday, if you guys remember, twisters were running through Kentucky and Arkansas and Illinois and Missouri. He was driving through all that stuff on his own time without any payment by the defense for the reasons that I explained earlier. But it doesn't stop there. Ijames has also traveled to not just around the United States, training other departments, but also dozens of countries. And they went through in labored and excruciating detail, especially, it's like, I don't know if Matthew Frank, who did the cross on this one, was just trying to cozy up to Ijames or not, or if he was just impressed. But I get what he was trying to go for. It's like, listen, this guy's such a super cop. Clearly he's biased towards cops. Well, take a look at his current cases and then just the entirety of his expertise over the years. He's not as biased as your expert, who basically exclusively, okay, of the 25 cases, I think 23 of them, or 27 of the 30, sorry, that were on his resume, were for prosecution going against police officers. Yeah, this guy's about 50-50, and he doesn't make a dime. So yeah, in summation of everything, the bottom line in Ijames' testimony was, as one would expect, the opposite of the conclusions of Stoughton. So just immediately taking those guys' testimony, okay, whatever you want, and nothing came out on cross, by the way. It was just Matthew Frank bumbling back and forth, so you can read it if you want, but that was all of it, okay? He just, flailingly tried to impeach him as being biased. I don't really know. He didn't get anywhere with it. So Stoughton had essentially testified that neither deadly nor deadly force by Potter could be considered appropriate. Okay. Ijames testified that either deadly or non-deadly force would have been legally justified and reasonable within police conduct in the case. So do you want to take some advice from a guy who's basically, theorized these different things over the past 15 years, okay, and has consulted on a couple dozen cases? Or a guy who's been in the field for 44 years, who is trained in literally dozens of countries in just about every state in the fucking union, who has multiple active cases going on right now, who is working with both sides of the courtroom on multiple cases. You go ahead and you take your pick, okay? But I think one is going to resonate a bit with the jury a little bit more, okay? Because once they're in their deliberations, theoretically Monday afternoon, okay, you got that 50-some-odd page report, single-spaced by Stoughton, or you got the 3-page summation there by Ijames. What are you going to grab if you need reference? Just saying. So yeah, now we're just going to take the final 2 witnesses in chronological order, and for the morning, okay, for most of the morning, okay, because direct examination on Kim Potter began just before lunch, but yeah, all wrapped up in a couple of hours. It was clinical and forensic psychologist Dr. Lawrence Miller, the shaven Dumbledore there, he came up, he's literally wrote, okay, and this is not an exaggeration again, he's 70 years old, and he's written 12 books on these topics, so he probably knows what he's talking about. So if you take the 2 expert witnesses, okay, on use of force, and you just mash them together, and for whatever reason you just want to throw that out, you have a guy who's there, who's talking about the critical actions themselves, okay? What happens when there's a use of force that happens, okay? What goes through somebody's mind? This guy's been practicing psychology since before I was born, okay? Since the mid-'80s. So, again, you just, you take your quality of experts and you go with whatever you think is correct. A clinical and forensic psychologist, Dr. Lawrence Miller, took the stand for the defense Friday morning to explain what he said were the mechanisms at play in Potter's mind when she shot Wright. Now, he explained an action error, okay, and that's the critical phraseology there. That is, anything that goes wrong in a high-stress situation is called an action error. as a situation in which you intend to do one thing, you think you are doing that thing, but you are doing something else, only to realize that that the action you intend is not one you took. Something that you don't throw somebody in jail for perceivably the rest of their life for. Told the court that such behavior happens every day, writing the wrong date on a check at the turn of the year, keying in an old password, and can usually be laughed off, but that is also common in the world of medicine, aviation, law enforcement, and high situations of high stress. Yeah, exactly. Why a pilot of dozens of years might, inexplicably not deploy the flight gear, okay? Why too much anesthetic might be applied by a seasoned anesthesiologist. These things happen, okay? And he also testified that like 1 million of those instances happen, okay? Not all of them resulting in death, okay? But 1 million of those instances happens in the healthcare industry just within the borders of the United States every fucking year. So these action errors happen all the fucking time, okay? Some of them do result in death. So it's not as uncommon and it's not as reckless, colloquially reckless, as the prosecution wants you to believe. According to Miller, memory works on two systems, 1 and 2. The first is reserved for information that we learn to the point of it being automatic and is, he said, consistently overwritten as new things become well learned. The second details is more conscious thinking. Yeah, exactly. An action error occurs, if they don't go into it, I remember this as well, but action errors occurs when stress factors combine to see the brain reach for a well-ingrained program that may not be the newest or most appropriate for the moment. In most cases, the factors usually involve an extremely compressed time frame, high threat, confusing, and changing circumstances. He said the circumstances may be ambiguous and put all of these things together, and that creates a high state of arousal and agitation, and that is the perfect storm for action error. Yeah, exactly. Okay, depending on what psychology books or what psychology literature you're reading, okay, you have those deep ingrained processes, okay, that you use and you just do on a daily basis. It's something as simple as, hey, remembering to breathe, okay? If you had to think about doing that all the time, you wouldn't have enough ability to form a coherent conversation because then you'd have to remember to breathe all the time. So thankfully, that's on an automatic process, right? And then you have the more dexterous information that you're coming in that you're having to make a decision on, like what path you walk down, okay? If there's a block in the road, how are you going to transverse it, okay? Are you going to go over it? Or are you going to go around it? It's not always there. It could be on a very familiar path that you're normally used to taking, which, okay, again, I'm sure everybody who goes to work and comes home mostly goes on the same path every day. You don't have to think about it. You did the first couple of times when you were going to a new job, obviously, and then you eventually refine the process. And then at the end of the day, you knew exactly how long it felt to go there, but then you're just on fucking autopilot. And that's number one. And then the number two is if there's construction, okay, during spring and summer, and then you have to adjust your pathway in order to get back home. So that's what Miller attested to, and then he held up extremely well on cross, which I don't know if that flustered Erin Eldridge. That was her name, by the way. I seen it when I was scrolling down on this, but yeah, she was up there, and she was trying to cross Miller, who, like I said, he's been doing this stuff for 40 fucking years, okay? And she, one of her big gotchas was, oh, well, I read this one NPR article. Well, she didn't reference NPR, but it was one of the top searches of the day yesterday. But slip and capture, by the way, is what some people, okay, she pulled out one specialist's opinion on it. Slip and capture is just junk science. Would you agree that your life's work is basically junk science? That's not what she asked. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but basically what she said. She did use the term junk science. So why would somebody who's dedicated his entire life to this practice, okay? There are many things that are out there. Just take a gender studies degree, okay? I think it's complete and utter horseshit. But the person who's acquired that gender studies degree is going to think it's the next greatest thing, and it's your job to take that apart. What she did, well, clearly, slip and capture is just junk science, okay? But Dr. Miller here, All of his testimony, everything that was on direct, was all about those critical actions, okay? And that's the underlying philosophy, okay? Slip and capture, whatever. You think that that's junk science? Cool, we'll just call it something else, okay? Instead of critical action, which is the technical term, but out in the field, remember, you're dealing with police officers, you're dealing with air traffic controllers. Are they going to be using, oh, excuse me, that's not slip and capture? Which refers to, okay, slip, you forgot your training at the time, and then by the time that it drops down to those different processes through your different ones and twos that are in there, you eventually gets captured by whatever available training or whatever available information there to rectify the situation. It gets captured by that. So apparently that's junk science, but you don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to take NPR's word for it. You can take the guy who's wrote dozen books on the fucking subject. You can go ahead and take his testimony. I think it's pretty fucking convincing. But yeah, that was only a couple of hours this morning. Less than an hour on direct, about an hour on cross, and Erin Eldridge was completely and utterly rattled because some of her objections didn't quite go her way, and this dude would not break on cross. Not even in the least bit, okay? He stood up and earned every dollar of his flat fee of $30,000, which seems like a lot. And yeah, oh my God, this guy got paid $30,000, but he's been doing it for a long fucking time, and it's a flat fee, okay? He could be there for a minute, he could be there for a month on this trial. That's his fee. You don't want to talk to the best, you don't hire the best. That's your opportunity. If you want a penny pinch, if you want to maybe pay potentially $95,000 on a little pencil neck geek who doesn't have any sort of expertise, I've written some papers. Well, this guy's written books. That's the difference, $10,000 to $30,000. That's like saying, well, my Toyota Corolla is just as good and just as fast as a Lamborghini Gallardo. Yeah. Okay, sure. But obviously, yes, the main event, okay, the bulk of the day, that didn't quite go through the end of the day because they argued, there wasn't really much argue. It was like, okay, the defense wants this in the jury instructions. It was all reasonable, by the way. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to throw it in there, and you guys can talk about it on Monday when you do your closing arguments. Cool, based. But Kim Potter gave her testimony. It was just about an hour on direct, and yeah, just before lunch, they ended up broaching the topic of the critical action itself, where she shot Daunte Wright, and clearly she's still incredibly shook up by the situation, okay? So we won't go much into the direct because it mostly just laid the foundation that, yeah, she's a lifelong cop. She has a lifelong passion for being a police officer. She literally has no complaints in 26 years of being a police officer in Brooklyn Center. Nobody ever complained about her, okay? And she was on patrol. She was never behind a desk, okay? That was not her position. She was on patrol for 26 years. That's something that the mainstream media is probably still pushing. Oh, desk cop that never has been out in the field before. Oh, she clearly just shot that black guy because he was just black and she's just a racist. Race never came up once in this entire trial, and I watched every second of it. So you see any of those racial components, that's media spin because that never entered the courtroom, by the way, at all, in totality. So yeah, here we go. Taking the stand Friday, Potter recalled how the April 11th traffic stop developed into chaos and ended with her grabbing her gun and fatally shooting the 20-year-old. Again, none of these are revelations. It's just been exactly what's been there forever and ever. So this has not been disputed at all. Her voice shaking and catching. She said, we were struggling. We were trying to keep him from driving away. It just went chaotic. And then I remember yelling, taser, 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 and nothing happened. And then he told me I shot him. As she uttered the words, Potter, 49, put her hands over her face and wept. Yeah, and then they went to lunch because it was probably a smart tactical decision. And again, you might remember during the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, Kyle broke down and then they ended up going for a break. Okay, they might have went for lunch or something like that, but I don't quite remember. But they went for a break, a substantial break, for him to collect himself. And yeah, obviously they did the exact same thing here, except that they went for lunch and then continued the direct examination afterwards. Because, yeah, she's still pretty fucked up about the situation. She has never expressed anything other than remorse for her actions. And it really, really got crystallized on the abhorrent cross-examination by Erin Eldridge. The moments leading up to the shooting, she recalled both her trainee officer, Anthony Lucky, and Sergeant Michael Johnson, who arrived to provide backup, had told Wright that he was under arrest. Officer Lucky had put his hands behind his back, and he started to say something about, don't do that, don't tense up, stop doing that, and it just went chaotic. I remember a struggle with Officer Lucky at the and the driver at the door. The driver was trying to get back into the car. I went around Officer Lucky, and he was trying to get back into the door, and I was between the door and Officer Lucky. Potter did not use Wright's name once. Oh my god, that must be my racism. Only referring to him as the driver. Yeah, she's a career police officer. She's probably testified before. Don't know anything about that. But yeah, when you're trying to describe a situation and you're trying to not break down at the most traumatic event of your entire life, you're probably trying to distance yourself from too many, emotional details at the time. She's heard the name Daunte Wright over and over and over again in trial. She's been sitting there every single fucking day, so she knows who it is. She's just trying to describe it, and she did like a police officer. So to hold that against her is a little bit disingenuous, if I could put it that way. As she continued, they're still struggling, and I can see Sergeant Johnson and the driver struggling over the gear stick because I can see a Johnson's hand. Oh, but according to expert witness Stoughton, according to Kim Potter's body-worn camera, I couldn't, there's no way that officer could have seen Officer Johnson inside there because her body camera, and she's 5'3", by the way, so her body cam is going to be, if I'm still kind of in frame, it's going to be somewhere around here. So yeah, is not really going to fucking help anybody. So him just basing and thinking that that's an accurate representation of what she's seen at the time. Disingenuous. Doesn't even come close to properly describing that. Crying, she recalled, and then I can see his face. He had a look of fear on his face, referring to Johnson. I'd never seen that before. Yes, a large, hulking police officer in total fear that this guy's probably going to drive away. I'm probably going to get drugged. I could be killed by this interaction if you don't do something. Body camera footage shown to the court earlier in the trial had shown Potter reacting hysterically and crying, and said that she was going to go to prison, something that the prosecution didn't bring up at all. And again, saying that I think I'm going to be going to prison, or I'm going to prison, after realizing that she shot somebody. I don't know how that's relevant, okay? It's like, okay, I'll bring it back to that vase example. Okay, you break that when you're a kid. Okay, you're 12 years old. You're playing hockey inside the house. Okay, you're playing baseball inside the house. Whatever the fuck. You break something of your parents. You think, oh my god, I'm gonna catch a major ass whooping at the end of this. That's just what fucking happens. Okay, it was a total accident. Okay, you could have been cleaning at the time. You could have been dusting. You knock something over, and it's like, oh fuck, this is something very important to somebody else. And I know I'm just equating a tangible piece of tinketry, whatever, something that's not quite as important as a human life, but it's a fair comparison. But you know what happens, and it's not like she immediately shot him and he's like, oh fuck, I'm gonna be going to jail, oh god, oh god, oh god. She was hysterical, she was crying. That was like the 9th thing that came out of her mouth after, oh my god, 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 I shot him, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And then, oh god, after she calmed down maybe a little bit and sat down on the curb, I'm going to prison. That came out not quite minutes because everything happened within a couple of seconds. That was not the first thing that came to her mind. Like, oh my god, I'm guilty. I might not get away with shooting this black guy. Fuck off. But when asked about her comment, she replied, I don't remember what I said, before choking up again. And again, it was good timing by the defense to put the guy who's like, oh yeah, in Dr. Miller, in these incredibly high-stress situations, when you mistake certain things and you have different mistakes that happen, all of the details kind of go fuzzy, okay? You don't really know what's going on. Your recollection of the events don't really quite match up. So her saying, I only remember certain things, okay? Not saying that she remembered something in her absolute hysteria. If you've seen any of the video, yeah, it's pretty hard to watch because she's just absolutely melting down because she thinks that somebody might have just died in front of her. Could be pretty traumatic. I don't know. Hopefully I never have to find myself in that situation. They had an ambulance for me. I don't know why. And then I went to the station. I don't remember a lot of things afterwards. When asked about remember saying something about prison, she replied, no. No, she said that she didn't remember a lot about what happened. Earlier, questioned by her attorney, Earl Gray, Potter had recounted the events of the day. Yeah, Had she been alone and not working as a field training officer, she said she probably would not have stopped Wright. Yeah, but then also, Anthony Lucky, who was driving the car and he was the one being trained at the time, had a certain amount of interactions with the public, something else that Potter testified to rather, during her director cross-examination. I can't quite remember, but Anthony Lucky has a certain amount of interactions that he needs to make, and he noticed that, yeah, expired tags, okay, this guy was turning left in a right-hand turn lane, okay, and he has something that's hanging in his rear view mirror. All three of those things together is like, we should probably pull him over and see what the hell's going on. Didn't have to arrest him, didn't know any of that stuff beforehand, but unfortunately for Daunte, well, he was a scumbag before everything happened. Sucks to suck, that's a fact of life. It was her trainee, Officer Lucky, who initiated the stop and seen an air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror and noting that the tags had expired. Very important phraseology here, Daily Mail. That's again why I have to watch this stuff, because I can catch little inconsistencies in reporting as it goes on. When asked if she would have made the call to pull Wright over for such an offense, he was working alone, Potter replied, most likely not. Yeah, and she gave a pretty detailed explanation of things. Potter explained, an air freshener to me is just an equipment violation, and during the high COVID times, the Department of Motor Vehicles were so offline, people weren't getting tags and were advised not to enforce those sorts of things because the tags were just available. Notice, that's her direct testimony, by the way. That sounds very officer-like, okay? And when she was going over the situations, she just immediately reverted to the way that she'd talk and the way that she described things for the past just about a quarter of a century. So to point it out is very disingenuous. But after they found that Wright had a bench warrant for a weapons violation, yeah, and not appearing before the court as well, so Potter said to arrest him because the warrant was an order of the court. Yeah, and again, that's something else that, with the exception of Professor Stoughton, said that all the police officers that testified, and I think there were like a dozen by the end of it, they said a warrant is an order from the court, and to not act on it is not in their purview, in so many different explanations. But I know this video is getting long in the tooth, but it's a few days worth of testimony, and most of those singular days weren't really worth covering. So Potter told the jury, that the weapon charge heightened her concern and that there might be a weapon in the car or on the driver. Traffic stops were, she said, inherently dangerous, which is why she stepped out to provide cover. Sometimes there's guns in the car. Sometimes there's uncooperative people. You don't know who you're stopping. Exactly. Yeah, and that was the face of the Ice Queen, who took a cross-examination completely wrong, at least in my opinion, okay? Can't see the jury, don't know how this really plays, but if you're doing cross-examination on somebody who's broken down before, who looks incredibly convincing, who's very sympathetic, who has had person after person just testify as to she's a good person, okay? And then to come up there and then to just badger her from the fucking kickoff point, and then to make her break down and cry again, and to not let off the gas. I don't care if it looks good if you're because this is truly a political prosecution, okay? All of these they're overcharges, okay? This is a civil matter. At the end of the day, yeah, does Daunte Wright's family deserve to get some money off of this? It was an accidental death. You can prove that in a preponderance of evidence, but when it comes to the hard facts of the criminal case, there's nothing there for the prosecution to gain on this one. So for her to just go up there and badger her and batter her on nothing, really, other than saying, oh, you don't remember this? Well, you shot and killed him. Okay, cool. She was clearly shook up by that to begin with, okay? And yeah, it wasn't fake tears or any of that stuff, and I haven't alleged any of that of any of the other people that were up there, okay? Daunte Wright's mother, obviously, you lost the kid, okay? Yeah, his fuck buddy who was in the car at the same time, it was first-hand witness of this really tragic event, and it is, okay? Everybody should be alive. Nobody should be charged in this situation. We could have been completely avoiding this situation right here. I could be making a totally different video. I could be doing something on, I don't know, the Matrix Resurrections or some dumb shit like that. But no, we're in the situation we are right now because Daunte Wright didn't want to comply with the officers, but apparently the course of action from the prosecution, oh, just let him go. You guys know who he is. You can come back to him later. Cool, right? But yeah, for all the reasons why Daunte Wright shouldn't have been operating that vehicle. Those are just more charges, okay? More charges that could have potentially came as well. And then reprimanding for the 3 officers that were there for not acting on a warrant, and then also letting somebody flee. Well, whatever. You already know that kind of stuff. It's just preposterous why the prosecution wouldn't raise a case because they don't have anything. They're just hoping that you're going to have they're hoping that the jury, by the way, just has a foggy mind when it comes to clear and honest definitions, which are going to be fully outlined and described in the jury instructions. So I don't know what they're going to try to accomplish with this. So yeah, we're just going to get to a couple of the highlights. I guess you'd call them highlights. The cross-examination, Erin Eldridge focused on Potter's training, alleging that weapons confusion was a subject addressed in PowerPoint after PowerPoint after PowerPoint. Hey guys, if you've ever done, especially like high school, okay, and I know I've looked at the analytics, there's like nobody who's in high school who watches these videos. Thank fucking God. But yeah, if you've ever been in training for work or anything like that, and somebody puts up a PowerPoint presentation, you probably remember every single one of those slides that's up there, right? Oh, but you've been doing it for years, right? You should clearly remember that. Okay, I've had first aid training for a very, very, very long time, and that's done every couple of years. I don't remember fuck all about it. Okay, I went to school to be a personal trainer. Okay, and I was there for 2 years, and since I was 16 years old, I've been lifting. Okay, and I'm 31 years old right now, so I've been doing it every single fucking day, at least 5 days a week, and for the past decade, about 7 days a week, without missing a single day in the past 3 or 4. I'll tell you what, I've probably forgotten more about lifts than most weekend warriors are going to know in their entire life, okay? I've read books on the subjects, okay? I don't remember every single thing that went through it, okay? I've watched Arnold Schwarzenegger's Pumping Iron like 15 times. I can't remember. I can't go scene by scene and tell you exactly the proper sequence of events in that documentary. These are things that I can't do, and they're fundamental to what I do. So for something that's so small, okay, for taser training, for firearms training, for an officer who in 24, 26 years had never fired her gun or her taser, what the fuck are we doing here? What are we doing here? Eldridge drew out the differences between Potter's gun and her taser, like many other people there. And it's like, yeah, you fucked up, okay? But you gotta prove that she knew what she was doing was wrong, and you didn't, and you were just mean about it. And then just, yeah, moving forward a little bit on. The buddy cam played to the point where Potter can be heard shouting, taser, taser, taser. Yeah, because, you know what? Hey, her just breaking down, discussing the video, okay? Obviously, just playing it would definitely not make her break down. Obviously, right? Fucking dimwit. Potter began blinking slowly, rapidly as the footage played. She tugged at her hair and was clearly in distress. That Gray stepped up and asked for a break. Judge 2 asked Potter if she needed a break, and she nodded yes, prompting the judge to dismiss the jurors for their lunch break. Yeah, that happened just before the lunch break. Right. Cross began, and then, yeah, she broke down, and then, right, and then Cross continued for less than an hour, I would think. It was about 30 minutes or so, sorry. Potter appeared diminished and downcast as she took the stand once more. Yeah, because this sucks, okay? Reliving the most traumatic event of your life again and again for some sick bitch's fucking twisted appearance of the events, trying to make her seem somehow malicious in her actions. At least, you know, trying to paint her that way, but it's just a 5'3" lady who looks something like probably one of your guys' aunts. Like, everybody knows she fucked up. It's the 12 days of her fucking up. You just haven't provided a case to back up your set of facts. Eldridge was unmoved by the weeping woman on the stand. She turned her attention to Potter's demeanor towards Johnson. You never asked if he was okay. This was ponderous, absolutely ponderous. When Sergeant Johnson said that she saved him from being dragged, Eldridge said, "You didn't bite. You didn't respond to that at all." By the way, she was sat on the curb crying hysterically at the time, and apparently, according to Erin Eldridge, by the way, a lawyer, okay, somebody who's never done anything in her life, not even really comb her hair, obviously. Yeah, apparently, of course, okay, if she didn't just let Daunte Wright go, what she should have done was get on the radio while she's just sobbing uncontrollably and tell people that she shot him, okay? And also, she says this too, if they don't get to it, run down the street and try to offer aid to Daunte Wright. She said that. That's legitimately what she said. And that, yeah, she wasn't necessarily attentive to the officer, Officer Johnson, who was there, who she just saved his life. And she wasn't necessarily hop on the pop to explain what the fuck was necessarily going on without having the proper amount of time to process what really went on. Ponderous why you'd ask this. Eldridge said you didn't bite, you didn't respond to it at all. Oh, you didn't. Oh, and you didn't say anything like, thank God I shot the guy and saved your life. You didn't say that, right? What? just a mean bitch. Just mean. No, I didn't. Potter accepted. Yeah, obviously. She never said that she was thankful. Okay, she's only ever expressed regret for the actions. Once again, just showing how malicious and evil she is. Eldridge continued, you would agree that a police officer, you have a duty to render aid and communicate information to the other officers. Yeah, probably when you're in the best frame of mind, but yeah, no, you do you. It's part of your job to assist those who are hurt and injured and to indicate to your officers that you know about a particular scene. But you didn't do any of those things on April 11th, did you? You stopped doing your job completely. You didn't communicate over the radio, right? You didn't make sure other officers knew what they had done. You didn't run down the street and try to save Daunte Wright's life. If that all just... Those were all said in quick succession, okay? Those weren't taken out of context. That was her line of questioning, and I don't know how that plays. Like, unless you have a bunch of just people with Black Lives Matter tattoos right there on their neck, and they're just seething whenever Kim Potter nods her head or wherever she says something. I don't know who that plays to. Like, are you legitimately playing for Twitter? Are you playing for the mainstream media? Like, I don't know who that resonates with, okay? Yeah, you were clearly hysterical. We've seen the footage over and over and over and over and over again. Okay? You're gonna chastise her for not getting on the radio? Like, what the fuck would she say other than... It's like, okay, also, you could go back to Michael Johnson's testimony, who called in for reinforcements, by the way, and said that, yeah, somebody's been shot. So, I don't know, kind of blows that up, but whatever. But yeah, to just say that you didn't run down the street, oh, it wasn't that far away. And then in some testimony, again, it was just like a block and a half away. It was so far away from what happened, and he managed to just drive heroically before swerving into somebody's vehicle, which obviously that's what Kim Potter caused. And if she would have just started running down the road to try to save him, she could have avoided that crash. Like, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. But yeah, this was basically, okay, probably the last thing the jury's going to remember at the end of it. You were focused on what you had done because you had just killed somebody, Eldridge added. Potter's reply came as a wail. No, she said. Tears were coming as she continued. I'm sorry it happened. I'm so sorry. That was the moment that was likely hoping that the defense would elicit on cross-examination. Okay, they just wanted the weepy woman to say that she felt incredibly sorry for the situation that was there. But it was pulled out by the idiotic prosecution because they didn't know how to properly assess the situation. Because, you know what, you could have cozied up to Kim Potter. You could have said, yeah, you know what, you love the community. You attested to it over and over again. Okay, these were your people. You knew everything about the community. You were there, okay? Accidents happen. You killed the guy that day, right? It was the worst moment of your life. It was the worst moment of your career, something that you've been pursuing for a lifetime. But no, instead, she was making ludicrous claims like you should have been chasing after the vehicle trying to render aid. It was exactly what Thomas Binger, the prosecutor, who was cross-examining Kyle Rittenhouse at the same time. Oh, you were a medic that night, and disregard some of my earlier questions where you weren't really a medic, but you were a medic that night, and you shot those guys, and you didn't once render aid. It's like, it's so preposterous. It's just absolutely preposterous. And that was the entire case of the prosecution. So again, on Monday, we'll probably go over closing arguments because, yeah, the defense is brief, concise, and they get straight to the point. And depending on who's doing the closing arguments, because for the opening arguments, that was done for the prosecution by Erin Eldridge, who just had weirdly placed emotion and started off just meandering, and it went for hours on end. And, Kim Potter broke her. oath to be a police officer, not to harm, not to kill anybody. Cool. You haven't really progressed that much. So if she's going to be doing the closing arguments, she's probably the best one on the prosecution, because there's six prosecutors listed on the state side. So it's either her, Muddlefuck Frank, or somebody who looks like a kid that I went to grade school with, whose last name is very close to the little kid who's back there, who just basically specialized in the police officers, who just has really awful control of his emotions. He could be doing the closing arguments, but he's definitely number 3 on that list. So it's probably going to be Frank or Eldridge, but after her just deplorable performance today, especially crumbling in front of a Dumbledore there, and then just badgering Kim Potter and just leaving her in a weepy mess, like, I don't know how you close, but maybe you do. Perhaps you do, or you just have Frank, and it really doesn't matter who does it on defense. Paul Lang opened up with opening statements, but you'd have to imagine the lead on it is Earl Gray. He's been tremendous throughout the entirety of the trial, and they have a really strong case, okay? And yeah, okay. My entire stance on the case since the beginning is Kim Potter made a mistake, okay? She clearly fucked up, okay? Even when we originally seen the body cam footage that was out there, I said, how the fuck do you mistake a taser for a gun? Okay, that's really fucking dim. How the hell do you do that? Well, that's just kind of fucking stupid. And now, at the end of the entire trial, without seeing closing arguments, I grant you that, but seeing the witness, seeing the facts of the case, still stand by that initial gut reaction. It's just unfortunate things about the law. There's certain barriers that you have to reach in order to get a successful prosecution, that you have to get for a guilty verdict on either of those charges. But those pesky things like recklessness and the legal definition of recklessness, a culpability that's there, the prosecution didn't provide any of that. So unless you were dead set against her at the beginning, listen, there's nothing that was provided by the prosecution that would really help you out with your logical consistency on things. All I've seen over the past couple of days is a really strong case bolstered by the defense, and the state just, I don't know, being petty and really cruel, if we're being completely honest. But there's a recap of the past few days, and I know this is probably one of the longest videos that I've ever released, but I do like doing these trial coverages, and I know that this video is probably going to do fuck all for ratings, but whatever, I don't give a shit. I just do this because, yeah, I've been listening along to it, I've been watching along with it, and I found it incredibly interesting, and this is one of those things that's going to have a lot of impact on the law enforcement community. And yeah, some cops are good, some cops are bad, okay, right, duh, okay, I'm not one of these midwits that think that, oh, there's cases to be made on both sides of the aisle. It's like, yeah, okay, obviously, there's good people and there's bad people. Oh, cool, thanks, great, thanks for your fucking contribution to the conversation at hand. But when it comes to good, law-abiding police officers that are out there, you take away the ability to use less lethal force, you start prosecuting them a lot more on absolute quantifiable accidents, you're going to end up with a lot more dead people, okay? Either cops just immediately going for deadly force, or just, as the prosecution has laid out, just let them go away, let them go and commit more crimes. Because Daunte Wright, if the defense was allowed to go down a certain line of questioning, probably would have been revealed that he was also dealing pot at the same time. Because why do you have somebody in the vehicle that has 2 cell phones, and why do you have a drug scale in your center console? Oh, I don't know. Those are some things that are just going to be out there forever. Or a mother who just recently got out of the clink for drug possession charges. I don't know why you'd possibly think that, but that's off the table. That dude's dead. We're just waiting to see if Kim Potter's going to be spending the rest of her days in a cage, or if she's going to be spending the holidays with her family out of state, because, yeah, she's moved out of Minnesota, something else that we found on direct examination. But thank you all very much for the gift of your time, especially on this super thazed episode. But hey, I like to talk about a bunch of things and be as comprehensive as I possibly can. But I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.